go.
Okay, recording's going.
Okay, very good.
Thank you all so very much for joining us today. We are moving right along. We've had some catching up on emails, but was able to review the emails that came out last week and try to respond to as many of those as I possibly could to address some of the questions and ask some of my own as well. So always we welcome you and we welcome the feedback that you give for the work that we are doing with this Senate Bill 64 committee. Let's start out. If you have had a chance to review the minutes that have been set out and also posted in Teams for the approval of the minutes. Are there any questions or concerns? Any updates needed? No, none? Great. So I think we have to have a first, someone to recommend the approval of the minutes.
We recommend to accept the minutes as written. Andy?
Thank you, Andy. And second?
Rick Lopez, second.
Thank you, Rick. And so all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Any opposed? All right, so we will approve those minutes for June 16th as have been presented to you all, and we will go to our next agenda item. And that's a discussion on our final tasks. Obviously, we have spoken from the beginning that our goal is to complete our work with this committee by the end of July, and that is out of respect for all of the work that you all have at your respective locations, and also so that we can move this forward. We have heard that the TEA, Jennifer has been very gracious in keeping us informed, but they have work to do and they are on hold until we get this part done, and we don't want to hold them up any longer than we need to. And Mindy, did you want to speak to the topic of the final task?
Work group, in your subcommittees, you've made good strides in the breakout topics, as it were, for formation of a pathway. You've kind of developed a course flow. You've developed course or program outcomes. You considered how to knit courses together with revisions of course content and possibly the recommendation of new courses. And you have brought up a host of very good issues around how to make this work in the state of Texas. I will add too, importantly, that you talked about how to bridge gaps where existing course content cannot be knit together, or where a created course cannot fill a gap. The priority for finalizing this work group's response to the coordinating board charge is to go ahead and create and recommend that pathway curriculum. The bonus is that you've brought up good issues summarized in the priorities and concerns list, for which you can make some pretty powerful recommendations, both to TEA and to the coordinating board. So for the remainder of the time we meet, we will discuss as a work group, A, how to finalize the pathway, B, how to respond with however you want to do it, a white paper, listed recommendations, both on priority topics that you think need to be addressed in order to make this pathway productive for the state of Texas, both for students and for the workforce. So that said, I'm going to congratulate you to getting to this place. We've never done this before. It's a first of its kind for the state, a statewide secondary, post-secondary CTE pathway. I hope fervently that we're setting a pattern for the future. It will be good for the state of Texas students if we can do that. That's it. Back over to you, Zena.
Thank you, Mindy. So a couple of questions that come to mind as we prepare our final, what would be our final presentation or document is what would be the expectation? Is a white paper going to be more well received than say a list or some other presentation that we might make? Do you have a sense of what they would expect from the committee in terms of a final presentation? Because I'd hate for us to go down one trail and then we should have gone down another.
Well, and I will tell you in response that it's somewhat unique to have a document recommending actions that are outside the creation of a course sequence um, with knitted, course content. However, we're on new territory with this secondary, post-secondary pathway. There are no rules for how to do this. It should be done in a way that best communicates what it is the committee has to recommend. Just speaking as someone who has done writing of various sorts professionally over time, I would say that narrative is going to be your means of expressing dense content that that a list cannot capture, but a list is going to catch the eye of the reader. So you will want some combination. I also recommend that you be as concise as possible. You don't need a 30-page document unless you legitimately need a 30-page document. So that I can only give general advice.
Okay. Are there any other questions that we might ask Mindy or the TA representatives? Jennifer, anything you want to add?
I agree with Mindy that, a mix of list and narrative, anything, if you were 5 people in a committee reviewing the paper and you knew you only were going to meet 4 times, meaning that could be over 2 days. So eight meetings per se is what kind of our last TEACS committees did. And the majority of that time is going to be spent on the course editing. So you'll want to make sure whatever they're using to edit that course is concise, to the point. And I agree with Mindy.
So certainly there is some information that we still need to solidify before we can finalize a report. And our last few meetings will be focused on that area of how we can make sure that, that the students are taking the courses that they should be taking at the high school level and prepared for the courses they would need at the college level. And I want to make sure that that's very clear so that we're not leaving it too open and broad for interpretation at both the high school level, the secondary level, and the post-secondary level.
I would recommend that this committee kind of proceed in an orderly fashion. You must determine your secondary and post-secondary course matter, course sequences, and so that is a must. That should gain priority. How to knit them together should be priority 2. That will take examining course outcomes and descriptions themselves, and possibly making suggestions about changes to courses or creation of new courses. TEA and coordinating board have differing processes for responding to course modifications and requests to create courses. But what comes from this committee will be reviewed by both agencies.
Okay.
And then third, if you find that creating course content can sufficiently bridge a gap, and the example that has been brought up has been just the basic understanding, the basic orientation of what cybersecurity is for, say, students transitioning from middle school into high school and needing to establish a track, a pathway.
Okay.
So I would say that, thinking about how you want to do these things and taking them in order, what should not happen is that finalization of a recommended pathway with recommended course modifications should not be thoroughly taken care of. And if we need to do two-part recommendations, if it comes to it, where we get that done first, and then we follow through a week later with final recommendations on priorities outside the pathway, I would say do that. But I would say first address that pathway. That is your core delivery.
Thank you, Mindy. Any other questions about our final, as we begin to compile all of this information into our final document report?
I'll just add real quick. I think the outlines and suggestions that have been given just so far, for me, the key here is making it palatable and actionable, right? We don't want something that people are just going to glaze over and, oh, great, this is a nice long report with all this words and all this stuff that, doesn't mean anything to us. So I think the approach and suggestions that you just gave and the format, I agree with. I don't know how to do it any better, but I do want I would encourage us to make sure we kind of double check how did I say this? There's a delicate balance to making it practical and palatable without sounding like condescending or like we're talking to third graders, but make it so it's actionable, like people can get something out of this and put something behind it. And I think this approach, what you guys have lined out, sounds great.
Well, thank you, Chris. And I'll say this, and as I'm saying this, perhaps Dwayne can pull up an example and share with us. Our existing programs of study and fields of study curricula exist in the form of charts with brief explanatory language where it's called for. And the work that goes into them sometimes has been a year and a half's worth of work, but they exist in very brief format, much like what a sequence looks like in a course catalog. So that will not take a long narrative. You don't need to make background explanations of why each of those courses is in there. Where your narratives will come in is in discussing the priority recommendation. Can you find us one, Dwayne? You're muted.
Hey, Mindy, I'd like to chime in. I'm sorry, I'm at a conference, so I'm out on the terrace, so if you hear background noise, just excuse me. I think it's something that we have to come to realization. I don't see how this cannot be a committee that can continue, that needs to continue. I don't know how we can bridge these gaps and work with TEA and THCB without having a continuously working relationship. This may be the first one, but I just think this has got to be something that has to be continuous. The technology is going to change, the curriculum is going to change, and it's just going to be a reoccurring. I don't know if it's an annual or if it's committee, how to do that, but I think that's something we need to really consider. How do we continue to bridge the working relationship and continue this effort? Eventually, I can tell you within another year, some of the technology we have listed probably would be, need to be revised. As you revise it, it trickles down. So that's something I think we need to consider also. How do we continue this effort?
That's a good question. You bring up a very good point, Dr. Newman. Creation of this curriculum, take a note every time I say the word curriculum, I think I need to make note of the fact that TEA and THECB, at least in the person of Mindy Nobles here, use the term curriculum differently. I believe to our secondary colleagues, it means a lesson plan. That's how it's been described to me. To the coordinating board and to, I believe, a college faculty, a curriculum is the courses and the course content. And then it's up to the individual faculty member to, make that happen in the classroom. So when I say curriculum, I mean what you see here on the screen, which is an example of what we might put together for the course sequence, modified, of course, for secondary, post-secondary, and the underlying course content, which is defined in our WECM course manual. I will say also that we don't need to define, okay, let me not go off on that point. So just that aside on curriculum. To come back to Dr. Newman's point, this work group exists as a response to a recommendation in a report to the legislature on a priority area for the Texas economy and the Texas workforce. And probably everything we do in everyday life, given the security in web-based everything, digital everything, is what makes the world run and keeps it running. We don't have a field of study process or a program of study process for secondary, post-secondary pathways. And yet one probably needs to come into being in a general way. That is something that we will need to take up with our leadership at the agency. Possibly it comes under our new Texas Transfer Advisory Committee, because it does involve transferring from secondary to post-secondary or matriculating, or exactly. Gregory, I don't have an answer for you right now, but let me assure you that I'm going to discuss this with Tina, and this agency will have to see how it wants to handle that. Now, to come down to this curriculum, moving forward, yes, indeed, it will need to be updated, and I have given that consideration. I don't know what the recommendation would be for how often it needs to be revisited, but we do need a mechanism for doing that. We will have one in place by the time we complete this work, because I recognize the usefulness of it.
And Dr. Newman, I just wanted to chime in too and agree with you 100%, but I also want to make this completely, like, going back to making it palatable. I don't see this any different than, our annual review of our processes and controls, or product development, or this is our product, as it evolves, or there's new courses added or courses modified, we have to decide, and we have to have, whether it's this committee to keep ongoing or some other mechanism to do that validation and make sure it's in line with what we've established here. Absolutely, that's going to be a given. It's beyond me to figure out what that formal mechanism will be. But as Mindy says, I guess we'll figure that out before we finish here.
If I may chime in really quickly,
Please.
we haven't developed the full methodology, but as I've mentioned before, we are working with a job skill analysis from Skills Engine, where it will help determine our courses and what will get reviewed in a cyclical basis. So what that's doing is we are asking higher ed industry and teachers to do those job skills surveys and put in additional surveys if needed. Additional job skills if needed. And we upload our student standards, or the TEKS. And so our team has a charge every fall to go in and align those with the current standards. And if we are finding numbers, like say you have 500 job skills and only 300 are matching up with our current student standards, those reports, one, are given to the TEKS committees when they begin their review, and it helps determine where in the cycle, what program of study, as we call it, pathways program of study, gets reviewed. So in something like cybersecurity, that's going to be consistently updated, it's very important for us to get consistent surveys completed. And then that way that can help determine the cadence. So that's one way with which the agency is working to determine what programs of study get updated and at what frequency.
Yeah, and I appreciate Jennifer that. Going back to making another comment. This is, many of us on this committee, this is not our first rodeo. And when you have a state as big and vast and diverse in region as Texas, I will hope, Jennifer, that when you guys started that process, and I hope, Mindy, that we can make sure that is a priority in our follow-up document, that we do not work out of the vacuum, we work together as a group. This is a time that, this is a first, this is a time for us to set some, be a trailblazer, work together as a group, TEA and TACP, working as a group as we define what is new, what is evolving, what is emerging. Because if not, we're going to go back to this table again, doing this once again.
I agree. And we have a unique creature here, this statewide secondary, post-secondary pathway. It will be up to our respective agencies to decide whether we will continue to create these in the future. I will note that a major piece of federal legislation, the Perkins Act, requires the creation of statewide secondary, post-secondary career pathways. Additionally, our own legislature may well pass such legislation at a future date. We're moving in the direction where we're being mandated to work more collaboratively and to work at the state level and make it work. However, that said, we do have a robust system in Texas of creating regional and extra-regional career pathways. TEA's PTech may be the premier example of that, along with its early college high school initiative ongoing. Colleges and their constituent secondaries routinely put together curricular agreements that ensure a smooth pathway, and then implement those things. So this work is going on all over Texas. One spirit of the age is to make this happen in a coordinated way, transparently at the state level. Another spirit of the age is to let the locals do what works locally. So we can't say where the policy decision will be. That remains to be discussed. I only know, what staff can recommend. Beyond that, we have this. We can't just walk away from it now that we planted it and never water it again. So we must come together again to review this. And that note is made, Dr. Newman. I've given this some thought and you just made me write it down. So, okay.
Mindy and Zena, what is the implementation timeframe here? When do they expect this to get to the schools? Spring 2022, fall 2022?
I'll speak to the post-secondary, and Jennifer, please, you speak to the secondary. Post-secondary, we believe approvals of any course revisions, course changes, and whatever internal approvals this pathway will go through, post-secondary approval level, will probably take into the fall. It can probably be posted in January for colleges to consider for fall of 22. That would be my, I'm sorry, 22. That would be my best estimate. That's what we've talked about here internally. And that's what we've talked about with the officers as well. Jennifer?
So we're a little different. When a TEACS committee meets and then has to go to the State Board of Education and work through approvals, that's about anywhere from a year to a 2-year process. I can see what sort of, because this bill was established, maybe there is a way to expedite things. But that's, you know, a normal cadence, about a 2-year cadence for things. So we are a little slower on our end, because you have to create professional development and give teachers some time. But then again, being cybersecurity, we may already have updated technology, right?
Well, we must do this together because we have created it together. And that means respecting our timelines, our mutual timelines. I'm always of the philosophy that it's better to do something right the first time than do it over later. So timeline remains uncertain, but those are the parameters for coordinating board and Texas Education Agency.
Thank you for that. And I just echo what Dr. Newman said. You know, we got to continuously review so that the technology doesn't get away from us.
That's right. That's right. That's something I'll bring up with my leadership over the next week.
And again, just to clarify, some colleges already do have their own curriculum for cybersecurity that they've developed with advisory committees. And some of these courses can be taught as dual credit and, you know, lead into the high school. So there are currently pathways. They're not statewide, but they're individual colleges. So they're not holding their breath waiting for us to complete this process. They're already started on that process.
What we are trying to do is to get an alignment of courses so that we'll know what's offered in the high schools that would prepare the students to be able to go into the cybersecurity program and take the cybersecurity courses at the college. And you know, that's going to be critical. And for where that doesn't exist at the high schools, that's where we really need to put into place, you know, the bridge that we've been talking about in the subcommittee, the dual subcommittee that I serve on.
And that's a very good point, Zena. I would say that the true innovation here is adding the secondary piece to what we know already happens at the post-secondary level, and vice versa, post-secondary level, making modifications to secondary courses to maintain that knitting. But you're right, that is the true innovation. And the fact that we're creating a statewide curriculum for, at least on the post-secondary side, at will adoption by any college for the purpose of a secondary, post-secondary pathway. But Dwayne is quite right. This sort of, this discipline, this degree is being created left and right at secondary, at lower division community colleges and in baccalaureate programs and master's programs across the state. It's exploding.
We've already ventured into our agenda item for the discussion and consideration of the final pathway matters. But I know that there are other ideas and other discussions that we need to have along the same lines of the pathway that we started out with in creating what a pathway would look like for the high school students going through high school and into the college courses. So let's, of course, continue the discussions and get feedback on from the committee representatives on how they saw the pathways from their perspective. And I'll start so that it will give you all a kind of a premise. One of the areas for our subcommittee that we spoke about, and one that Joe mentioned in our officers meeting, was about the credentialing of the faculty. So one of the pathways would be, we have to make sure that we have it very clear on what a credential would look like for a high school faculty member and for the college faculty member. He asked for a matrix, and I'm working on that now. And so that's just one area. The other area is the curriculum that we would need to establish that the students would take both in the high school and at the college level, that would create the pathway for them to ultimately have a certificate or an associate's degree in cybersecurity. And so we need to be able to clearly announce or clearly outline what that would be, especially for the high schools where we have not seen many courses that are available, I don't think, for the students to take. And is that an opportunity to create more courses? Jennifer, I hear what you're saying. It takes a couple of years for you all to get to the point where you've gotten approval to offer something differently than you have in the past. And if we know that that's the case, and we're looking at a 2-year window, we need to be clearly outlining what the expectations would be now for the high schools to have in their database of courses for students to choose from. Comments? We know that we have curriculum.
Well,
I hear someone talking. Someone.
I think that was Greg's background.
Oh,
yeah, I just shut it down. I was gonna say, I think a lot of the things we're going to, yeah, correct, Dr. Tina Jackson, I agree with you. We have to be clear on the objectives of the high schools and making sure that they have a repository of courses. I think they already have a few courses that map very well. We have a program, Cyber. We've been mapping, as Dwayne said, we've been mapping and articulating with high schools and PTECs here. I think what has to be clear now is to get through our curriculum that we've suggested and proposed and identify where the gaps are. Right now, I can assure you, they probably, my understanding with Josh on the committee and others, and Jennifer on the committee, their terminology, whether they go a whole semester or go an entire year, is different from ours. I think that's going to be a major challenge. How do we bridge that? How do we make those courses retrofit into the overall pathway? If not, we got to come up with some unique ideas and making it work. Again, I don't have a prescripted solution for it because we just got through completing the path. The proposed pathway curriculum on our side. And I think that that's something that hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I hope we get more input on how to bridge that. I'm interested in seeing how it's going to work because there's just so many courses that they have, we have, and there may be some ways that we can uniquely bridge them together with some additional, finagling that they can agree upon. But that's the challenge that I've seen out of our committee. That how do we make it work? How do we bridge them together? That's a huge challenge.
but Dr. Newman, aren't we already in some ways seeing that happening, as Mindy mentioned earlier, as it relates to the early college high schools and the PTECs? And I know that those are models that were defined and they're moving and they're doing very well. But couldn't we envision that the students, if we identify the high school courses that the students would need to take that would prepare them to go into cybersecurity, then on the TEA side, we're basically saying with this particular model here, those students would take their last 2 years of courses, technical courses for cybersecurity.
Yeah, but you're assuming all going to be PTECs. They may not always
No,
be.
not PTECs, not necessarily PTECs, or not even the early college high schools. We're creating a whole nother kind of model beyond PTECs and early college high schools.
I understand that, Dr. Jack, but they all have to line up. When you put our curriculum up there, and we have to work to line them up. That's the challenge. 3 or 4 of the courses I've already done it before. They map very well. The other courses don't really map because philosophy and their approach to it. They may go a whole semester, a whole year. Ours don't go a whole year. It may go 8 weeks. It may go 16 weeks. There's a lot of gaps that we can fill out. I'm not saying we can't do it. These are things that we have to be aware of when we start diving into working with our partners on.
Right. And I'm saying that we may not be able to align them so that they get they take the high school course and get the credit. And in those situations where that's just not the case, the course doesn't exist the way it should be, or the way we can give the student credit for it, then we are saying that student has to take it as a college course. It just maybe they're taking it at the high school as a college course.
That's called dual credit.
That's called dual credit.
I'm aware of that. I'm very aware of that. We're saying the same thing. We're just coming in a different approach. I'm very aware of it. You have the P-Tech approach, and you're going to have the dual credit approach. It's just which one fits which high school or K to 12 in school. That's all I'm saying.
Right. So I would like to think that we're not as far apart as maybe, some think that we are, that we really can get there if we just agree that this is the way it has to be for us to get the students where they need to be to get the associate's degree.
I'm not saying we're far apart. I'm saying these are things that they do. We have to respect what they do and come up with a plan and bring and merge them together, that we all can coexist. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
I think we also have to accept that as high school students, they'll be taking classes in one instance where they're taking classes and getting credit solely for their high school diploma. Then there's another category that they're taking classes for the purpose of earning dual credit. And obviously the former is much easier for high schools to build and to staff faculty. So in my mind, I think we need to be focusing on that at the beginning to say, let's promulgate cybersecurity classes at every high school we possibly can. Then you build upon that towards now, what does it take? And let them know, and I think they know what it takes. Then you get into the teacher problem of having enough teachers that are credentialed for community colleges. So I think we just need to accept the fact that we're going to have to take step one first. And for those that already have dual credit programs, more power to them, and let them move on and let them help other schools. But that's just what we face here today because of teacher problems, credentialing, some starting new programs, some modifying the programs they have. And of course, what's been brought up already is not having enough classes.
This may be something that's available in the larger metropolitan areas and less so in the rural areas. But I will say, and I'm going to use Arlington Independent School District, and I know Fort Worth has one and so on and so forth. But they have created a career and technical high school. And that high school is focused solely on students going into a career or technical field that'll prepare them to go into the workforce when they graduate from the high school. And so I can easily envision, fingers crossed, that, I can make a case with that particular high school that they should include in their curriculum dual credit courses for cybersecurity, and that students could in fact achieve an associate's degree or minimally a certificate by the time that they graduate from the high school. And so instead of, it might one day be an opportunity for every high school, but if we zeroed in and said, we're really going to focus on, this is the model that we're presenting, and the school district may say, this fits in our CATE Center, our Career and Technical Education Center, and we're going to start there. And then when it outgrows that center, then we're going to expand it to another high school, and we'll expand it to another high school, so that we can at least get in the door of a school district to say, this is an option, get students interested, and then watch it grow and expand. sometimes we oversaturate. We do that in the colleges. You know, we have 6 campuses. We oversaturate a program in every campus, and then we can't fill it because we've got it in too many places, and we have to scale it back some. So that's just an opportunity for me that as I think about it, you know, for me, it shouldn't be as difficult if we focus on those schools, particularly those areas where they already have something in place for a student who wants to pursue a career right out of high school, and we're giving them what they need. We're laying the foundation with cybersecurity for them to be able to do that. Just
if I may just give an example and let me know, Gregory, if this is kind of what you were thinking. I was an engineering and architecture teacher, and when I articulated my courses with college, we always had a hard time because I saw my students more often than the professor saw the students. And colleges have very specific courses that are specific to one area, where I was teaching a broad engineering and architecture course. And so when we articulated, we started with the very entry level courses because there was just not any other space. And the professor couldn't believe the amount of content I covered in my amount of time because his model was different. And so we did have to start with 1, maybe 2 courses to begin with in order to satisfy that.
Point on. That's what I was saying earlier. Point on. Also, that is that you have 3 courses in TEAC already that I have identified, at least from our perspective, Colin, that we already articulated. The CPMT course that we all agreed in our proposed pathway curriculum. That course is computer maintenance, computer whatever you call it. That is something that you have right now. That's an easy win that we can articulate. There are some other courses that deal with fundamentals of networking. Easy course. There's other courses that deal with operating system. Easy. Those are low-hanging fruit. We know we can work and articulate those and get those off the ground. The other ones, as you said, is a little different because, learning from Josh, that's to be on our committee. He teaches a completely different way up from a standpoint of just simple operating system. He teaches it in a whole semester. He goes maybe even more depth into it. We don't. So we have to work out a plan on how to merge those two together. If it's not, I totally agree. Maybe that's one course they have to take on our college campus. But those are things that we have to kind of work through. But there's some low-hanging fruit there that you guys already are doing. We're doing consistently. And we went after that when we put our proposed replan together, Dr. Oser and Joe and the team. So those are the things that I think we can go after right away in quick wins. And the other ones we have to attack individually. And if they don't work, I do agree. We might have to look at maybe just offering them on our campus or the college campuses.
I'm seeing that Angel has his hand up.
Angel?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I'm outdoors, so I'm using the video from my computer, but the audio from my phone. I have to agree with the comment of where Joe Sanchez was going. I happen to have the luxury of working very closely with secondary schools, high schools, specifically CTE high schools. That's my charter here at CompTIA. And you don't see many, let's call it dual credit programs when you're looking at the majority. I mean, there are a few outstanding schools throughout the nation that have some outstanding programs, but that is not the norm. And then when it comes to cybersecurity programs, again, there are exceptions. The vast majority of them, in terms of content, it's a little bit challenging for your typical high school student. So what we're seeing is schools are more hitting the network infrastructure and kids are continuing that cybersecurity pathway when they hit community colleges. But to add that dual credit program, to focus simply on that, in my opinion, that would be a mistake, to be quite honest. It's just, you know, I'm basically reiterating what you were saying. Is let's look at what the vast majority of the schools can do. Let's implement as many of these programs as opposed to picking a handful of schools. CT programs are struggling when it comes to the cybersecurity track. Some has nothing to do with the curriculum. Some have to do with the teachers are not even competent to teach the cybersecurity programs. Again, there are definitely exceptions, but I'm not looking at the exceptions. I'm looking at the general, at the whole. So that would be certainly my recommendation is that you look at the foundation, IT foundation training, network fundamentals, and when they continue on to post-secondary, then you start hitting those specific content in cybersecurity.
And I guess to Angel's point, we really just have two sets of courses. There's the high school courses and the college courses. Now, some high schools or colleges can merge them, the college courses into dual credit, some cannot. But regardless, we still have those college level courses. And so, you know, whether or not they're dual credit, they'll still be in the curriculum.
So
Now, what you can get, if I can continue, I'm sorry, what you can get is once those kids are prepared in high school through network fundamentals, maybe even cloud fundamentals, they may not need to repeat that in community college. And they can go right into the more challenging cybersecurity courses because they already received that prerequisite, those prerequisite skills at the secondary level. So they save money, they save time, and they go right to the meat and potato of cybersecurity once they hit post-secondary.
We would get that on record. We would make that's a good example. We would make that a component of this pathway by connecting it in its course content to the post-secondary course that would sequence after it. Is that what you're saying?
Say again, Mindy?
You would weave this into the pathway by taking that course that exists at the secondary level. It can get them ready, whether it's taught for dual credit or for high school credit, can get them ready to take the post-secondary content. That would be done by connecting course content to a post-secondary course. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's the next level, right? You know, I'm not sure what the actual terminology, but it's that pathway on an upward scale that would make sense. So someone that has taken successfully in high school a IT fundamentals and a network fundamentals courseware, they would be at a much better position to successfully complete a specific cybersecurity course in post-secondary. So that's what I'm saying. It's a continuous path, that career path, that learning path that makes sense. Because what we're seeing, quite honestly, and some is because it's too advanced for the student or the teachers just, you know, is not competent. I'm not talking about his pedagogical skills. I'm just talking about his subject matter expertise in technology, or a combination of the two. But we're seeing many high schoolers across the country not successfully passing cybersecurity courses. You know, I know Joe sees probably a different thing because they start very early. But you know, what we're seeing is the success rate in passing exams in cybersecurity is low. Sorry for the background noise, folks. It's very low, or could be improved. And that's why I said, you know, there are recommendations that can continue that. Just take those fundamentals classes in secondary and then continue with the specific cybersecurity course and more challenging courses starting from the first year at a community college.
Okay. thank
Can
you.
I,
Let me
can,
say,
can I, go ahead, Jennifer.
let me say too, I don't know if anybody's looked at the program of study at the secondary level, but the level 4 courses like cybersecurity capstone, practicum, independent study, that might be an area that this team wants to discuss, because the student standards in those courses are written very broadly. So that really opens an opportunity for regional colleges to articulate and have movement within standards inside those classes that maybe can help students on a regional level. So just kind of keep that in mind too, that the purpose of these practicums and capstone courses were written for a capstone experience and not necessarily really nitty gritty content. And so they can be modified on a per school basis, whether that school is rural and feeding somewhere, or whether, you know, they're in a heavily densely populated area.
Can I suggest that at least we know it was supposed to be a part of our agenda. I'm not sure if we're there or we still want to stay on this, but if we can just pop up the proposed pathway curriculum that the Credential subgroup 1 produced, and maybe we can talk through there, because I think a lot of things that Angel proposed and the team proposed, I think we can answer that just by looking at what we proposed. Some of those fundamental courses, we didn't go outside of the gate to add anything new. These are things that are, we looked at the TEA program of study and try to map to it early on. So if we can pop that up, that may answer a lot of those questions.
Before we go there, can I make a comment about the credentials that Dr. Jackson was talking about to identify qualified people? Dr. Jackson, are you looking at not only credentials, but institutional requirements?
Credentials and institution, you mean for the businesses in the industry of what they would require for the individuals to come in to work?
No, for the schools. For instance, you may be a very successful cybersecurity professional, but you're non-degreed. So at the college level, that's going to be a challenge.
Right.
And at the high school level, I know in some of the P-Tech or dual credit programs, we're looking for a teacher who's degreed, but also is certified in one of the technologies. So is that part of your research?
So the research that we've done from the college level is to focus on the SACS credentials requirement. And so that we would not narrow the scope or pigeon any one institution into not being able to hire faculty. We said that we would say to those institutions to follow the SACS accrediting bodies requirements for hiring college faculty. And we recognize that that is different than what is required for the high school teachers. We also talked about where they did not have credentialed high school teachers credentialed at the college level to teach those cybersecurity courses, then a faculty member would go to the high school to teach the courses.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Add too, Joe, that if an industry individual without the SACS credentials to teach a post-secondary course can be of worth in the classroom, and they can be of great worth. A teacher of record, a faculty member of record who is credentialed in partnership with that industry person can, in essence, shepherd and steer and be responsible for the course, but we can get the benefit of an industry professional. We can hire that industry professional as, I say we, a college could hire that industry professional on a contract basis and ensure that, you know, the course had a credentialed faculty member of record. And that would be perfectly allowable. There are ways to bring in the expertise needed.
Thanks, Dr. Oster. This is something that she jazzed it up. It's only Dr. Oster to do this. She really jazzed it up. Well, so this is something that came out of, and please, teams, subcommunity, group one, please chime in. This is what we initially put together, and it's called the Tech Pathway. This is more the technology pathway. Those who want to pursue more of the hands-on, really nitty-gritty down to the bits and the bytes. This is just a proposal that we want to look at and work through. Over to the left is representing the colleges, the Rubens. What we did, we looked across the entire state. As Mindy and Dwayne said earlier, there are a number of programs, and we felt that it's best to look at those programs and not try to disrupt them as much, and try to get them to, at least buy into this concept of a new pathway for cybersecurity. And over to the right is courses that are taken directly out of TEA that we try to map over to. This is what our attempt to do. This is something that we have to fine tune. There may be others. I know there's a 302 for networking that allows the high schools to participate in offering their courses, that we can establish an articulation agreement over to the colleges. So this is what we did just for the tech pathway. Certainly feedback is welcome. Team chime in if you have any comments. This is what we want to open up to the entire committee to discuss.
This may be our concrete starting place. This bears discussion. When I've worked with curriculum committees developing course sequences like this, what we've looked at is just this very thing, and I see the recommendation of a new course. You all would want to develop a template for that, or we would want to hold a course workshop for that. And you've actually got, secondary courses paired with it over there. If we took this as our starting point, we would need TEA's expertise on, these courses fitted into this. And we would need for this committee to consider this proposed structure, agree on any modifications, and adopt some version of it as its final recommendation. That's just an example of what we've done with committees like this in the past that have developed statewide curriculum.
So Dr. Newman, for this model, which looks great to me, I want to go back to what Angel said about the dual credit. So with this particular pathway model, would students take the dual credit courses or not?
If you articulate computer maintenance 130303, that is nothing more than our IT Essentials class. I've done that several times here. If you had, there's another one called 302. I'm not sure, Dr. Olson, we might have missed that one. That maps to, it doesn't map. I don't think the high schools are going to invest, at least unless you're Josh, and you be quoted. No, we don't have any high schools in our area that will have invested in a CCNA lab. And so, and if that can be or we can work on or, it can be CCNA 1, Introduction to Networking. There's other that can focus on network. That can map over to, I know it's a 302 that maps to directly to that. So if they're taking these and we articulate those at the high school level, if they complete those at the high school level, that's an articulation agreement. They can bypass the courses that identified in the degree plan over at a 2-year degree, AS degree.
Only if the teacher's credentialed.
Only if the teacher's credentials, yeah.
And that was my point early on, is this is start for any high school in Texas.
But it's easy.
Then finding teachers for this could be a challenge for Marfa ISD, just for the courses on the right, let alone finding somebody who is dual credit credentialed at a community college nearby.
But the easy for here is the credentialing for the student, for an instructor for teaching in the workforce is a lot different from instructor for teaching in a transfer COSC BCIS course. Many times they have to have certifications. We can have to have some industry experience. It's not necessarily their degree.
And so that's what I was saying, that if the faculty member at the college, wherever the college is that's closest to Marfa, Texas, if they have a credentialed faculty member, then that faculty member could go into the high school to teach the courses that were needed, that high school didn't have, that they couldn't align, and the students couldn't get what we would call credit by experience or PLA experience. And so I'm still trying to wrap my mind around, we find the courses on the high school side that the students could take to become proficient or become knowledgeable in cybersecurity, and then they wouldn't take any of the college courses until after they graduated from high school, I think is what I understood, and then they go to the community college.
Dr. Jackson, this is Amy Jordan. Hey, I will tell you that being a smaller charter school, it is extremely hard to find those credentialed technicians, teachers. And the other problem is that depending on the college, I can't get an adjunct from college to come over and teach unless I have at least 16 kids to make a class. So if I don't have 16 kids interested in cybersecurity at that time for that particular class, I don't get help from my junior college. So you're going to have those problems come up with those smaller rural areas like Marfa and all that, because if they don't have a big enough class, the college is not going to send a professor to them.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's a really good point, because we're all faced with that. And I mean, all of us, that we are held to these very strict guidelines. In Tarrant County, it's 15 students. And so I wonder if this is not an opportunity for us to put into this recommendation that is lifted. You know, do we have that authority? Can we put that in our language to say that those schools that struggle to get that magic number of 15 or 16 should not be held to that, and that we should be willing still to work with them? Those are the conversations we also need to be having. Mindy, you're muted.
I'm going to put my former university administrator hat on, and some of those standards for what makes a class, because a class has to make is the term, right, are externally imposed, sometimes by an accreditation board to make sure that there's enough folks actively in the program, actively doing the stuff. But it's more often an imposition of budget, because they have to have enough students in the classroom to cash flow the contract of the instructor. And so what the recommend, and we're not going to overcome those economics with that recommendation, but what we might be able to do is recommend that colleges, given the past year, that colleges work with those schools that struggle to offer hybrid options where they can still attend through a hybrid attending classroom or something like that. I think a recommendation for hybrid workarounds would be more palatable to them. And not only that, but it would almost ensure that the classes they are teaching do make.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Andy. Let me chime in, because this is something that we also do. We're not privileged to don't have the rural communities. We have one of our community high schools called Community High School, that I have a faculty out there that is employed by Community High School. He was identified. I have to invest in time in developing that faculty member, which basically provided him resources to train, develop, certifications. And that has been a year-long process. But in reward, he's able to take on and meet the criteria that we have for faculty for our college and become a part of our adjunct and teach those courses. It's an investment. And then that's something we might want to bring up. How do we, if we're going to take on this particular assignment, how do we take responsibility in developing the high school faculty? Where are the funds to do that, Mindy? Is there funds available to invest in them? Because it takes me 2 hours per week to get him up to speed, go give him resources, team him up with a mentor. He's doing fine now. But I can't do that for all the rural high schools that I have in my community. It's too much. It's just one of me, and I only have so many faculty members that can mentor up. But the investment turns out where he has 14 students consistently just got through the program. He's got another 14 students coming to the program. So the dividends are paying off. And he's only teaching computer maintenance and Net Plus. Those are the only ones that he is credentialed to teach. Now, as Andy stated, when those students have to take on the more intense courses like Python, that is a hybrid solution. They agree they will be in a classroom with a monitor, person monitoring them, and they're taking that class online, in synchronous online, real time. That's something that I'm not happy with, but it's something that is flexible with the institutions and the high schools can agree upon. We can't solve it all, but there's things, you leveraging technology, leveraging some of the things that we can put toward developing the faculty, we can address some of these low-hanging fruit items.
Yeah, well, that's my point I've been trying to make. Amy Grace said it well, is, well, let me go back. Who are we doing this for? The purpose of this work group is for the state of Texas. There's 1,000+ school districts in the state, plus a couple of hundred magnet schools, charter schools. I'm guessing we may have 75 school districts that have a cybersecurity program that does some dual credit. I believe we need to be doing this for the 900 that do not. We need to establish the first level is cybersecurity curriculum with no dual credit. The next level is cybersecurity curriculum with dual credit. And the third level are the PTECs and the ICSI that Josh is building and the Alamo Academies that's here in San Antonio. We have to take all of them, but we need to start with level 1, which is cybersecurity classes in high school that are not dual credit, because finding teachers for those is going to be hard enough. Then the next level is going to be even harder to get credentialed, which we're talking about. And the third level, they already have most of what they need. I know there's shortages, but they already have programs that have been established to do that. So I've said it 3 times, and I'm sorry if I'm getting a little passionate about this. We should be doing this for the 900 school districts that don't have any cybersecurity curriculum first, then go up each of the levels.
Yeah, and I guess to Joel's point and what I was saying earlier is that, dual credit is more a mode of instruction. It's not a course has to be dual credit or cannot be dual credit. We have the high school courses and the college courses. And that's what we're going to present, or that's what we need to present. Again, as Joe was saying, for the 900 districts, the minimum. Now, any of the districts that can teach dual credit, that's just icing on the cake, basically.
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify something, because we're all accredited by SAC-COC. And at one point they had come out and said that a college course that's offered at the high school could not have any students enrolled in that course except for those students who are seeking the dual credit. And the pushback was so strong for SAC-COC, which governs several southern states. They came back and amended that and changed it, because there are so many of the small 900 schools that Joe is talking about that they can't make a section of dual credit just with dual credit students, but they can make a section of a computer class that has half dual credit students who want to get the college credit and will do the extra work, and the other half who don't care about it and don't want to do the extra work. And so that is an option out there. It has not changed. They came back, they rescinded that, and that is an option that we need to make sure that we understand.
And that's just going back into the Gen Pop. They're just high school students taking courses just like general college students. They don't have the actual numbers. And I think that's an option that we should also consider.
So if we go to Joe's model with the 900 students in the level 1, then we need to have feedback from the TEA representatives on how do they envision we would do that? Because if these 900 schools are offering that level 1 of high school courses, then we need to get the feedback from TEA. The colleges need to be quiet so that we can hear from you how that would happen.
Right, with our programs of study, we have a menu, right? So there's, within that menu, there's ones that count for dual credit. There's one that count for science, math. There are options within the program of study. There's a myriad of courses at level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. So schools can make decisions based on their needs.
So we would need something of a pathway that would show what that would look like for cybersecurity at the high school level.
And there are quite a few courses right now, already implemented. There's 3 courses in level 1, 4 in level 2. There's like 8 in level 3, and then a bunch of, capstone and practicum and IB computer science courses in level 4. So the menu is pretty, robust as it is. It's just, do we want to add a course or modify a course in terms of its standards?
Well, let me not be quiet on this, because this is what the right side is doing. We went to that TEA model and looked at it. We didn't select any of these courses just out of general. These courses coming directly from their field of study.
Right. The only thing I noticed that's currently on the screen is computer science 2. But if this committee recommends computer science 2, then I take that to the TEACS committee and we implement it over into the program of study. That's just nitpicky. But you're right. I mean, all these courses that you see on the screen are some courses that are in the current menu of choices.
And let's get clarification. This is.
Can I interrupt you before you get too excited, Dr. Newman? just a little bit. So I want to go back to Joe's model that we start with a level 1 of high school courses. If we follow that model, then it stands to reason, then this is my thinking, this is not an issue for this Senate bill committee, because then the TEA and the high schools are already doing that, or planning to do it, or should do it. Because there would be no college courses involved in that level 1. If we start there, right? If I understand correctly.
Right, and there is encouragement, like for instance, principles of information technology and say fundamentals of computer science, and then there's foundations of cybersecurity, which are the first 3 choices in level 1. There is encouragement that those courses go down to 8th grade. So that way a student can 9, 10, 11, and 12 can make more progress through a program of study. But yes, it's there. I think what the course titles are there, the courses are established. It's just getting into the course content through a TEACS committee, standards committee, and making sure that the standards are consistently updated so that way it fits. And then if there's a class here and there that we need to dual credit with, perfect.
Thank you, Jen.
I would ask the industry partners, for the high school student who's graduated with that level, no college courses, what doors would open for them in the job market?
Zena, before we do that,
Yes.
I noticed Catherine has been patiently waving.
Sorry.
Catherine, we can't hear you for some reason, even though you're not muted.
Yeah, I couldn't be heard a moment ago. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Catherine, are you there?
I'm sorry, for some reason we can't hear you. Maybe try calling in. If you get that one of the numbers from the invitation, from the meeting invitation, and call in.
As Catherine does that,
Yeah.
I feel obliged to make a point here. If we leave dual credit courses out of the equation and students will complete a high school sequence and then go complete a post-secondary sequence. We do not have a secondary, post-secondary career pathway.
Totally
The
agree.
foundational premise of a secondary, post-secondary career pathway is that students begin in high school an integrated curriculum that earns them credit while they're post-secondary credit while they're in high school. And there is no loss of credit. There is a smooth pathway that begins while they're still in high school into post-secondary credentials.
I was understanding that was objective of this committee.
Yes, yes.
So,
I agree with you both, but I just want to give voice to what Angel and what Joe, what their vision is, so that we can make sure that everybody has had an opportunity to clearly explain what they envision. And so we are all clear on that, but I think we still need to hear them and to understand better why it is in their mind dual credit should be off the table while the kids are in high school.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, Dr. Jackson. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, as has been said before, this is new in this pathway that creating from secondary to post-secondary. And this is new in the field that's new as well, cybersecurity. So what I'm thinking about is that principal, that school district superintendent in Marfa who doesn't have a program, but knows he wants to get his or her students into this field. And I think it behooves us, whether it's part of the charge or not. I believe it's part of this committee or this work group's responsibility to say, if you want to start a cybersecurity program at your district, at your school, this is what the recommendations of this work group are. These are the courses that you would start with. Then what we see on the screen now is for those schools that have some courses already, or maybe have the resources in terms of funding and labs and teachers to be able to build a dual credit program. And they would be following what's here or what will be adopted eventually. That's my vision, is that we can't jump to third base, if you will, when schools haven't even come to bat yet. Using my oftentimes baseball analogy, is we need to start with something. And on the other hand is I keep hearing the word pathway. Does pathway equal dual credit? To me, a pathway is if I'm a high school student and I'm taking science or I'm taking home ec or what have you, and I decide to be a culinary expert in college, my pathway starts in that sophomore year taking home ec or home ec 2. That's a pathway. It doesn't always have to equate to dual credit unless somewhere in TEHCB, pathway equals dual credit. I hope I'm clear on that. A pathway is merely it's the journey you take to become a cybersecurity specialist, whether you decide to take courses in high school that are not dual credit or courses that are dual credit. It just gets you a little bit faster along the way. I get all that. I'm thinking about those 900 school districts out there that don't have anything.
Y'all hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
A pathway, a secondary, post-secondary pathway, it can be obtained by different means. Yes, indeed it can. As Dwayne pointed out, dual credit is a mode of instruction. It's a mode of content delivery. The key element of a secondary, post-secondary career pathway is that the student leaves high school and doesn't have to go take all 60 of those hours you see on the screen. A student has completed some of those hours while still in high school and then matriculates on to complete the remainder. That's why the whole high school curriculum can't be sequenced, and then the whole secondary, post-secondary curriculum can't be sequenced. So however it's accomplished, whether with dual credit or whether through the adaptation of courses that then can be PLA accredited, as Zena talked about a moment ago, when the student goes on to college, however it's done, that 60 should shrink to some lesser number. 45, say.
So we had, who's been trying to speak?
Catherine,
Catherine.
good.
Catherine, go ahead.
Had to call in. Can y'all hear me okay?
yes.
I was trying to half listen while I was figuring out my technical issues, but something caught my attention. I wanted to ask Dwayne and Mindy about this. So our charge is, and like what he was saying, when we're talking pathway, we recommend this curriculum on the left for the college, it's just hypothetically right now. And then we recommend on the high school side, these courses match the courses to the left. We don't concern ourselves with whether the high schools articulate that or dual credited or however they deliver it. Is that what I'm understanding?
Exactly. This is simply a table of courses whose content is compatible. Am I correct, Dr. Newman?
100% correct. And
That's what I just wanted to know what our charge.
I'm sorry, Dr. Olson, go ahead on.
Oh, what I mean is, our charge as a committee, are we supposed to be aligning them to what we have right now, where we say computer maintenance equals those first two courses? That would be the first and second semester at the high school, and it would have to be dual credit. Or are we just saying that any high school student in the state of Texas that takes computer maintenance, we recommend that their articulation for the cybersecurity pathway be those two courses? We don't concern ourselves with dual credit, right? We just concern ourselves with these are equal. And that's our recommendation. Is that what we're doing?
That was my understanding.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So then a student taking computer maintenance in high school, let me make sure I understand, Gregory, and everybody else who's speaking, Rick, Catherine, a student who takes computer maintenance in high school then would be ready to take these two courses on the left, or would be creditable for these two courses on the left?
A student who completed computer maintenance is computer maintenance. If you look at the learning outcomes from both computer maintenance and CPMT 1305 IT Essentials, the learning outcomes are very compatible. So if a student completes a computer maintenance course in high school, whether it's articulated or not, let's say it is articulated and agreed upon across high schools, well, that student does not have to take computer maintenance when he wants to switch over to a cybersecurity degree or track in college. He's already met that requirement.
So then if the student is to receive post-secondary credit for the computer maintenance class, that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what my understanding of the charter was.
Well, the charter is to create a pathway. This would be one means of doing it. You would need to see that computer maintenance is taught by an adequately credentialed professor so that a college can award credit and not get in trouble with SACs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or they have to have a agreed upon test out process in order to, identify that they have met those requirements of the college.
Okay. But then on the road to a degree with this post-secondary curriculum on the left, the student then would not have to take the first two courses, the CPMT and ITCC.
I wouldn't say ITCC 13.4. I would say CPMT.
Just for an example.
13, yeah, exactly. 1305.
Okay, so that leads me into my next question. When we're doing this write-up, we keep talking about dual credit and all this other stuff. We really don't need to concern ourselves with making sure that it aligns time-wise. We just need to make sure it aligns course to course, high school to college. Correct? Because I know in our committee we had several discussions about, and you see how it's blocked here where computer maintenance is across two of the college courses because their courses are a year long, whereas our courses are a semester long. I'm wanting to make sure we don't have to concern ourselves necessarily with the timeline of first and second semester. We're just creating this recommendation that these courses and these courses lead to the pathway for this.
I think that's correct. Yeah, I would think, Catherine, for instance, Josh at ICSI is going to teach networking in the second year.
Okay. And the reason why I brought this up, Mindy, was because I kind of feel like we were getting off on a tangent on worrying about the dual credit thing. And if that's really not our concern, we just need to focus on the content of these courses, the curriculum, the pathway for the high school, and writing up the recommendations of what should go where and how it should, credentialing and whatnot.
Agree.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. Thank
So,
you for
so,
Very well
so,
put.
I mean,
so,
just, let me
so
ask
can-
a question also, just for my clarification. You're saying that CPMT 1305 and the 1314 are going to be computer maintenance 130, 303?
yes.
No, well, yes, but no. I mean, this is just a draft.
Oh, man.
As a group, we were going to decide all that together. We were
It-
going to let you
Yeah,
TEA people do that.
I've never seen that. I thought it was always a single course to a single course.
Well, in our meetings, it was kind of impossible because the computer maintenance is a year long, correct?
So
Yeah, and Edith,
if you
it's
think
the
about-
way, the high schools teach their courses. So there wasn't a 1-for-1 match. It was, well, what are you actually teaching and how does that relate to the college courses? So that's why you see that.
Right.
Because one of the things the high school teaches a great deal, they may have a lot more content within that computer maintenance course. Our IT Essentials course requires a certain level of content, but it's a computer maintenance, but high schools exceed that. That's great.
But if we looked at it in terms of the computer maintenance course being a part 1 and part 2, so in the fall semester, part 1 would be our CPMT 1305, and in the spring semester, it would be ITCC 1314.
No, it
Correct.
can't be. No.
It can't, because then you don't have the hours.
That's a totally, when you go from going from computer maintenance into ITCC 1314 is a huge jump. You're talking to Cisco, you're talking a whole different
But
curriculum.
the way you have it laid out here, Dr. Newman, is what she just asked you. If those two top courses
Okay.
would be the equivalent of computer maintenance.
And I mentioned early on that
Straw man.
CPMT 1305 and 13303 are equivalent. And I excluded that CCNA. That's what I said early on.
So we're missing a course.
Can we
You can-
not look at the actual titles of these college courses right now? Because this was literally just me toying around.
Yeah.
This is not true to, I have no idea what is really contained in these high school courses, but in theory, what she just asked is correct. Whatever course, the first course and the second course in the college degree would equate to that first course, part 1 and 2 in the high school side. That's it. We have not gotten as far as agreeing on that pathway yet.
That's what we're supposed to do today. Dr.
Yeah, that's what I
Olson,
thought we were going to do today.
that's what I thought we were going to do too. Dr. Olson, networking in 130305 can be moved up into a match with ITCC 1314.
Okay, and that's something I was hoping to get recommendations in the email. I think Rick's the only one that really sent me anything. But maybe the TEA people can look at this and look at the outcomes in this, because I've created it pretty user-friendly so they can click on a course and it'll take them to the tab that has the description and they can see if it would match up with one of their TEA courses and help us out there, because I don't know what I'm doing. Most of us college people, we don't know the TEA side of things.
Right, and I also put a TEACS document into the Teams folder as well to review the TEACS.
And this is
And
what
I
I
did
thought.
look at that. I'm just not sure what I'm looking at and if this is right. And evidently it's not, because I'm being told that ITCC.
Well, no, you're not
somewhere else.
wrong. You got a good starting point. This is what I thought we were going to combine the group today to discuss.
Mhm.
Are we on close? Are we mapping? Are we not mapping? Is this in alignment with TEA? This is what I thought we were going to do.
Dr. Newman, we're not disagreeing as far as the learning objectives in either college or high school course. What I'm saying is that when you address a dual credit course for college credit, those courses on the TEA site that are being used have a specific amount of hours that must be met at the high school. And at times they're not equivalent to the college. I know a lot of y'all are saying, hey, I've done this on a 5-day, every day we meet schedule, but we're not seeing that here in San Antonio. We're seeing a lot more of block scheduling for our high schools, where they may only meet twice or 3 times a week, if at that. Now, I've never seen a combination being done for more than one course. And I think we need to steer away from that. I think the bigger problem here is that TEA does not have sufficient number of courses for us to select from to align with our college credit courses.
And that's what we're here for, to work that out. Going back early on, this is what we're here for, to learn how you map.
Well,
And that's why I was
where-
asking before about the dual credit and what our charge truly was, if it was just a pathway or what. Because, I mean, my point of reference, we have an early college high school on our campus. So they come and take our college classes, and I don't concern myself with what they give them over on the high school side. So, but we actually have to concern ourselves with both sides on this committee.
Yes.
Well, and if we find a course that is close, that's where I will be going to the TEACS committee and saying, hey, we need to take some standards over in this college course and make sure that they end up in this other course. So instead of reinventing the wheel and coming up with a new course, I'll try to spend some time in the morning going through, this isn't my full wheelhouse and I inherited this, but I will try to go through as much as I can in the morning to see and kind of make an assessment on what matches up to our courses. And then, like I said, if we find that there's 4 sets of standards that are missing, then we just tell the TEACS committee that's going to meet, a standards committee, if people don't know the TEACS language, and we add those to the course instead of making a new course.
Yeah, what we needed, thank
I
you,
like that.
that we need more high school teachers looking at this.
And
we need more teachers that are teaching these courses to be
right.
able to know what's being taught and how long they're teaching and how long the courses are, whether they're full year, half semester, what have you, and are aligned with the courses on the left. We just need more high school teachers in this process.
So could I recommend that the TEA people take this and kind of maybe follow this model that we did here? These are our program learning outcomes, of course, but maybe if you put your TEACS up here and then marked each course that maybe the TEACS existing content covers, and then you can find the gaps and we can kind of go from there on what do y'all need to do to align.
I have a lot of other charges, just like everybody else. I'm embedded in a lot of projects and I just inherited this because somebody moved on to a different position. I can't say I can complete it soon. I can begin it. This is a lot of work for me to add into my schedule, and my bandwidth right now. So
There's someone else with the TEA. I know Stacy has been with us from the beginning. Maybe she could help us.
Stacy's not on the call right now, but I am here. I've done this work with a lot of PTECs for different pathways, so we can, Jennifer and I can coordinate along with Stacy to see how we can map out. There's a lot of components to the TEACS like there are for your PLOs, so we'll try to map them as best we can, but the tech pathway that you all have already started is a good start. And from what I heard from the group in general is that there's a lot of foundational, there's a good suggestion for the tech pathway high school on one of the sheets that you had. And it also sounds like it might be in the best interest to think about it, not just from this perspective, but from a course to course suggestion, kind of like how Mr. Sanchez was recommending, that there are there's the levels of dual credit versus the level of like a full-blown PTEC to just a dual credit CTE academy. There's so many different ones. So I personally will start thinking from that charge. So I think TEA has, a good 3 people to try to look at this before the next time. I believe you all have officer meetings. So I'll take a look at this in conjunction with Jennifer.
Thank you very
That's
much.
great.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Jennifer.
Can I take a minute to show everyone how this works so that I can put it in the main folder in Teams?
Please.
Is that okay, Mindy?
Please do.
Okay. So, of course, we've got the high school. We hadn't done anything really much for the policy pathway. These were the program learning outcomes. I welcome everyone to review them, and we asked, for some industry input on them and stuff. Then we did an alignment, which isn't quite complete yet because we have new courses in there we haven't written yet. We have a level 1 certification, a tech pathway, and a policy pathway, and all of them are hyperlinked via course. All these tabs remaining are the courses, and this will take you to that specific course so you can read the description and the end of course outcomes. If you want to get quickly back to a pathway, you just click that and you're right back. Real simple, okay?
Is there an area that's a little more detailed, or like any area we can look, like Crystal was saying, our TEKs are really detailed with knowledge statements and student expectations. And I just see the single sentences. So I just want to make sure that is there another place that kind of lists out, I don't know, like an outline of the course or anything?
So Jennifer, that's
No.
a good leeway. That's a good leeway to what the comment that I wanted to make is from the last workshop session that I was in the industry section. I committed to presenting to the subcommittee what that pathway looks like from high school to post-secondary, and it would have what you're talking about, Jennifer, the actual syllabus per course that I would ask this team to look at, and it may work in conjunction with this, but it may not. I don't know. I mean, Dr. Newman made a comment about earlier in the conversation about CCNA not seeing it in high school, but I gotta respectfully disagree with that. CCNA is all over high schools, especially with Cisco, and that would go nicely with any networking fundamentals courseware as well. So I would like the opportunity to provide what that pathway looks like along with the syllabus that goes with it. And that can maybe be easier to match with existing courses, with existing TEKS courses to make that exercise a little easier and less challenging. I also like to comment, I think it was Dr. Jackson asked about asking the industry about, high school kids being career ready and, right out of high school. And I would have to say that I'm going to lean it to say no. When we're specifically talking about cybersecurity, I'm not just talking about technology in general, but I don't think you're going to find very few employers, and I came from that space, that is going to hire a high school kid and put them in a cybersecurity role without a even further comprehensive training that's specific to that employer. And which is why I recommended earlier that that in high school, the large focus should be in fundamentals, in networking fundamentals, in computer technology fundamentals, and even cybersecurity fundamentals. But when it comes to real world specific cybersecurity content, that needs to happen in my opinion, at the post-secondary level, combined with some kind of work-based learning experience to increase the chances of that individual to be hired by industry. There's exceptions to everything, but the likelihood of a kid being hired out of a cybersecurity program right out of high school is very low.
Yeah, I would agree, Angel. It's rare, unless you have a high school student who has Net Plus, Security Plus, Ethical Hacker,
which is going to be hard to get. Which
right.
Very few.
There are some. There are very few, but
there are few.
Yeah.
Okay, so far as the syllabus goes, I'm sorry, this is what you've got. Each college creates our own syllabi based off of these overarching and of course outcomes. So, and yes, they're written ambiguously, probably for some very good reasons that I don't know about. But this is what we have. I mean, I'm sure that since yours are so detailed on the TEK side, that you should be able to fit into several courses. I mean, from what I glanced at, it looked like it, but I just wasn't sure about which one's the best because I don't teach that side of things.
I will be able to provide very detailed syllabus, in terms of the different courses that I talked about, and make this process a lot easier to match.
Would you agree that the WECM course description and outcomes would be the closest we could offer? Because syllabi tend to be basically breakouts, better articulated versions, but they take off and vary, you know, from faculty to faculty.
Yeah.
So the WECM description remains the core description.
Exactly.
Would you agree?
I agree. Each institution syllabuses meet the WECM requirements, but they may vary off the point, add more to it or add less to, or genetically less, but add more to it.
Folks, we have 15 minutes. I recommend that we can consider, that we spend a few minutes considering what we can and cannot accomplish, what we would like to accomplish at the next meeting, what we would think we need to do before the next meeting to get it done. And just starting with what we can and cannot accomplish. I'm going to say, let's bear in mind here that we're not going to implement this on secondary campuses or post-secondary campuses. We are designing a model that can be adopted. Is every college or every high school in the state going to be able to do it? No. The state has got to resource this, and we have got to, you know, get with the revolution and get people up to speed to teach it. What we are doing is making a beginning, we're setting a model. And that involves courses, course content, and matching them to what's realistic in the industry and on the ground being taught. So where do we get a start in developing this? We've talked, you know, we've made some progress today with reflecting further on the credentials flow chart, but what do we need to do next? What do we do to get to the point that we're saying, yes, we agree that this must be part of it, and we are going to have students completing some of that 60 semester credit hours while they're still in high school.
So Wendy,
Mindy, I have a draft of a to-do list. If y'all would like for me to share it, we can try, and I'll just type over it if y'all want to change it. We can start from there.
This is Catherine, right?
Wendy, I'd like to just say a couple of things. I know that we got off track in terms of what our agenda was set for today. But I also believe that we needed to have these conversations so that we can move forward and get to an end point. Because otherwise, if everyone is not able to express what their thoughts are, we not be able to vet it and work it through to see how that may or may not work for us. At the end of the day, we're going to have some committee members who still not going to be all in, and then others who are like, yep, we're on the right track. So we've all, at the end of the day, as a team, have to say, this is what we came up with, and we all agree to it. Because all it takes is one of us, one broken link to go out into the community and say, I never agreed with any of that. I don't think it'll work. And then it'll just filtrate throughout the state, and we'll have half who will say, yep, we're gonna try it. And other half will say, the committee couldn't even agree. So we, at the end of the day, have to agree. We have to say, yep, we all worked on this, and we all agree to what we are putting forward. We have vetted every situation. We have addressed every concern, whether it's only high school or dual credit, we have addressed it. And at the end of the day, we have to say we agree. So I think it was good for us to have that conversation again so that we can go back and revisit. But yes, we're going to move forward, and we're going to have at the end of the project, we're going to have a presentation that I think represents the work of this committee. And so I just want to say thank you all for that.
Well said by our chairman.
For kind of expounding on what you were hoping to accomplish today. I think we did accomplish it. I think we do kind of have out on the table everybody's concerns. And of course, it's my job to make sure we keep moving forward. And I trust your good leadership to make that happen. I think we've got a good beginning to wrapping up this work. Funny to say we've got a good beginning to the end, but I think we're at the point where we've got a good beginning to get to the end.
There's something Dr. Newman said that kind of, I guess, concerned me that might be a misconception. And I guess the idea is that, are you trying to map every single high school course to a college level course? And that may not be necessary or may not even be possible. Again, we're looking at, the high school courses in one group and the college courses in the other group. There might be some overlap, but there doesn't have to be a one-to-one correlation.
I know who it's not.
Okay.
Thank you, Dwayne. Okay, we have up on the screen the credentials flow subcommittee. They have agenda or a task list, if you will, to-do list. So who's going to walk us through that?
Well, this is just what we had drafted to kind of go forward that we knew on our end we needed to do. If there's additions or modifications that need to be made that we're reading as a whole group, that would be helpful, and I can overwrite it on the screen, and then we can save it and send it out to everybody. But I think this is kind of along the lines of what Mindy was hoping we could do, was maybe create a list of our to-dos for the next few meetings.
And I would say we were coming together because we needed to align the work that we have been doing in our respective committees, particularly as it relates to the pathway. And a question was asked earlier, does pathway automatically include or equate to dual credit? And in this sense, in the work that we're doing, it does include dual credit. So a pathway can be in different formats at different institutions based on what they're doing. For the work that we're doing for this committee, it does include dual credit.
But it's not only dual credit.
It is not only dual credit, but it does include dual credit.
Right, thank you. I knew it included dual credit. I just want to make sure that those the programs that we hope to model don't have to be dual credit.
But this, for the purposes of our work, it will include dual credit.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's no other way to get there.
Yeah.
I do want to mention something on the TEA side. Pathways is a super loaded phrase for us as well, because we know that it's defined in so many different places. So from the P-TECH perspective, that's part of the reason why we use the term post-secondary outcomes, because it is a little bit more encompassing of things like IBCs, because those don't come from the IHE partners. So as the TEA team goes back and looks at the large document that y'all put together for the course equivalencies, we'll try to keep that in mind as well when we're doing working off of the different scenarios to present to you all. That pathways is kind of inclusive for us in our definition of post-secondary outcomes, so we're not so strict to just the dual credit. So we'll try to be soft when we map some of those things as well for y'all's consideration.
And Crystal, that's a good point. We also learned from Stacy that use of the term, I use the term embedded faculty or teachers, and that means something totally different in TEA's language. It's embedded in TEA's language, she said, is really for those students who are faculty who are teaching with on-ramps, which I didn't know. So we do need to be conscientious of definitions as we move forward, and probably include a definitions list in our report that represents the work that we're doing, so that it's very clear to everyone who's reading it, because TEA individuals are going to come at it through a different lens than the higher ed individuals, and we want to make sure that they understand what those terms mean.
If I may, on the topic of vernacular here, I think I described 3 different levels, 1, 2, and 3, 3 being P-TECH. I recognize that Jennifer used the term level, and I think she used level 1 as freshman year, level 2 as sophomore. So I'd just like to change that to maybe platform 1, platform 2, platform 3, just so that we don't confuse level 1 with level 1 of what I spoke about.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Are there any other items to add to the credentials flow subcommittee? I mean, they've got a pretty good list going for us. Okay. So the one item that we didn't get to because we've already addressed the topics and focus for our next meeting. So thank you for that credentials flow. Is the priorities that was requested by Joe. And I don't know if the last document that came out included all of the priorities. So we'll revisit that, Mindy, if we could just add that to the week after next agenda, so that we can make sure it's encompassing all of the different subcommittees.
We didn't get to do that today. I think I boiled everything down into that statement and had no intention of leaving anything out, but I did want the work group to confirm that.
Okay, and we'll look at it in the officers meeting as well to see if we can streamline it a little more.
Very good. That would be great.
So we've had some really good, healthy discussions today, and I appreciate everybody's contributions. If you're really silent in these meetings, we want you to be a little more vocal, because your voice matters and you may know a lot more than what the rest of us are talking about. So please, please, please feel free to speak up and share what you know or what you're doing in your community to support, your high school. The secondary component is so important, and we don't want to leave any facet of what they need from us out of this whole picture. And so please, if you've been silent for whatever reason, speak up for us so that we can hear from you, because I know that some of you are doing really great work at your institutions across the state, and we need to know that. Mindy, is there anything else I need to cover? Any questions before we end our meeting?
I think we've pretty well, in a way, gotten to where we needed to get to today.
Yes.
We didn't get down to the nitty gritty, but we got ready to get down to the nitty gritty. I have no questions. Work group?
I would ask everyone to go and look at the pathway model that's out there that's still being tweaked, and we all have conversations with our subcommittees offline and get feedback so that we can come to the table at our next meeting ready to address what we think ought to happen, what's missing, what could be included, or if we're all on the same page. All righty, thank you.
Jennifer, where did you put the doc you dropped?
Oh, the TEEX,
Mhm.
is that what you're talking about? It
Yeah.
should be, it's in our breakout file.
Okay, I'll look for it.
There.
Just need some general.
And then I was trying to share the PLO's pathway and courses with Crystal as well. I remember saying, I know it's in our files, but it's going to be in the main one as well, I believe.
I just moved it to general right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you all. You all have a great rest of your week and a wonderful 4th of July. Stay safe.
Take care, everyone.
All of you.
Happy Independence Day.
Bye-bye.